It's not over. Well, now it is. Well, basically, it's been over for a long, long time in Palo Alto. Since when has Stanford become just a highlight machine on offense? This is incredible. Mark Rogers TV, just a few minutes after they walk off the field at Stanford Stadium with the Cardinal blowing out UCLA 56-35. It wasn't nearly that close. So let's talk about the superlatives on the Stanford side. It all starts with Christian McCaffrey. He came into the game as the nation's all-time, all-purpose leading rusher, receiver, and kick returner total yardage per game, and he did nothing to weaken his position with 369 yards and a school record 243 yards rushing. He did this on 25 carries. He scored 4 touchdowns. So there was a time when McCaffrey was not getting into the end zone, not because he wasn't a great back, but because he was carrying the load down inside the 5-yard line, and then either Barry Sanders or Raymond Wright would lug the ball into the end zone. But now McCaffrey starting to finish off those runs and hit pay dirt, and it's paying off for his Heisman Trophy candidacy in this one. So look out, Leonard Fournette. Stanford was dominant in this game in a number of ways. The offensive line was amazing. Yes, UCLA's depleted up front. Kenny Clark's still an exceptional player. Kenny Young at linebacker, a very strong player for UCLA, but just not enough depth in losing Eddie Vanderdoes, Miles Jack, Fabian Monroe. So UCLA, not quite an elite team, not because of the talent factor, in my opinion. I think it's depth. They need the twos to be nearly as good as the ones, and they're not at this point. So Stanford dominated in the running game, similar to what we saw with Arizona and Arizona State, and this is Stanford. So they really dominated up front against this UCLA team, and Christian McCaffrey, again, poetry in motion. And if you love offensive line play, and it wasn't so captivating to watch a McCaffrey run by everyone and juke everybody out, and he's become a very tough runner. He's bulked up, and he's a much more physically imposing player than he was last season. This offensive line is poetry in motion. It is well orchestrated. It is fun in this day and age of the read option, time and time again, with just about every offense in the country, to see pulling guards, to see a well-orchestrated offensive line perform. They have great chemistry along this offensive front, and they really went and focused on the offensive line in recruiting over the past couple of years, and it has paid off for the Stanford Cardinal. It all started with Elijah Holder, pick 6, a great anticipation on the right sideline of a Josh Rosen pass that was just a shade late and a shade behind the wide receiver. Holder picked it off, and it was 7-0. UCLA stayed in the game. Offensively, they looked really good in the first half, minus the mistakes, talking about penalties primarily. They racked up 280 yards of offense, but they trailed 35-17 at the half. Rosen took them on a 2-minute drive that was very impressive. This kid can make all the throws. He's tough. He is well-schooled, and he is a student of the game and already has a total grasp of the offense. Sure, he makes a few ill-fated throws, but considering the pressure, the complexity of the Stanford scheme on defense, he's very impressive. Josh Rosen finished the night 22 of 42, 325, 3 touchdowns, and 2 picks. The 1 pick, an ill-fated pass that put them in a 7-0 hole early. McCaffrey with the 95-yard kickoff return that set up the Austin Hooper touchdown on 1st and goal to make it 14-3. When Josh Rosen found, it was Darren Andrews down the middle. That made it a 14-10 game. That's the last chance UCLA had to stay in this one. From then on out, it was basically the Stanford offensive line pushing UCLA all over the field and McCaffrey making people look silly. And Kevin Hogan had a nice game. I would have never guessed that his numbers were 8 for 15 for 181, because most of that, if not just basically all of that, was produced in the first half when it really mattered. So Hogan had a nice night as well, aside from a third quarter interception that was kind of ugly, but didn't mean a whole lot at that point. Stanford, way too much for UCLA. The Cardinal, at this point, looked to be the best team in the Pac-12, despite Utah's perfect record at this point. Would love to hear what you have to say about Stanford, UCLA's chances of hanging in the Pac-12 South race. It's not over for the Bruins, despite 2 losses in conference. But for Stanford, undefeated in the Pac-12, the one blemish, week 1 versus Northwestern, could hurt their chances for a college football playoff, but not if they complete this run in the Pac-12. Let's talk Stanford and UCLA right here on Mark Rogers TV.